Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Today on the podcast, we have Gabe. Gabe is a really interesting guy. He has quite a wild story. He was in and out of prison for multiple years, started his addiction with drugs and alcohol very young, and, in and out of prison until about age 40. He shares his story tonight. We do, trigger warning, talk about some sexual assault, some big T trauma, some really hard things that he went through. Ultimately, he was able to get sober and get clean, and the work that he's doing now is just simply amazing. He is an author of 2 books. His latest book is called The Peer Recovery Community Organization, which basically is an instruction manual to help people create recovery centers in their own community. The work that he's doing now is really, really special. I know you guys are going to love this episode. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Help me welcome Gabe to the podcast.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, I'm so excited that you're here. Where are you coming in from?
I'm in Colorado on the western slope.
All right. Awesome. And you're in the mountains, right?
Yeah. Glenwood Springs. They call this the Roaring Fork Valley.
Okay. I love it. Do you hike? Do you ski? Do you river raft? Any of that fun stuff?
Hike. I'm a hiker, not a skier. And an occasional river rafting.
Okay. There's so much to do out there. It's just like an outdoor playground.
Yeah. No, it's a nice place. I'm originally from New York, Long Island, actually. But this is much different. But I love it. We're in a small rural community, and it's nice.
It's beautiful. Is it hot out there? It's summer, right? So, does it get super hot in the summer?
It's been in the 90s. It's a dry heat.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the humidity like y'all got back east. But
yeah, in Georgia, it's just thick when you walk outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So me and you know each other through the online recovery community, and I saw that you are actually a pastor for the local prison. Is that right? Do I have that right?
The actual title is Chaplain. I'm there for all faiths, just to help anybody, what they might be going through, if there's a death in the family but I did do some Christian Bible studies and services and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about that. But since I saw that you were a follower of Jesus, I had this quote saved for someone that was, and that's what we're going to start our episode out with.
Okay.
So this quote is from Rich Velotas, who is a pastor and an author of the book, The Deeply Formed Life, which is a really good spiritual book. So the quote goes, "What God does in us as we wait is often much more important than what we are waiting for." What does that quote mean to you?
What resonates with me is it's in the waiting where the growth happens. If often we're waiting for an answer, and a lot of people get frustrated during that time because they're hoping they hear something audible, very clear to find answer from God. I often say that it's in the waiting. It's our self-talk and the messages that are going through our own head. If we're conscious of the questions that we have and we're bringing them before God, that's really where the answers are. And then in these conversations, people, I'm waiting to hear from God, and then you get feedback. And if you recognize your feelings in that moment, God's speaking to you and all that. So, yeah. And I think in the end, during that process, that's what's molding us and crafting us so that whatever is waiting for us, we're prepared for it when it comes. Yeah. So there's growth opportunity in that space, or some people refer to it as the pause, right? Pausing. There's great opportunity in there if we're willing to look and listen.
Yeah, that was really well said. I agree with that. I struggle with the pause because I am always in fast forward. Just go, 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 go from the second my feet hit the floor. But that is something I'm working on, is the pause. But I love this quote. I love this author. The book is about a life intentionally shaped by spiritual practices and values. And it emphasizes personal transformation, which is everything to me. how I build my life. And the key concepts of the book is non-anxious presence, transformative values, ongoing transformation, and the gift of grace, which are all important things. The quote, when I read this, it made me think of my own journey. And there was many times I pleaded to God to help me. And, in that waiting period, I think what ultimately happened is once I finally surrendered, like I let myself go, I let my ego go to die, is where the transformation happened for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate. For me, getting into recovery, being all in, and for me, being a faith-based guy, like submitting to God and surrendering, literally laying down my life, right? Which for me meant laying down my ego and putting to death the identity. It was really like an identity crisis, this image that I created that I felt I had to be to survive in this world. And I was killing myself to sustain that image.
Right. And that image isn't even authentically who you are. It was some like derivative of who you actually are, and usually a negative version of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was well said.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to hear your story. So wherever you feel comfortable, just take us back.
Sure. And as I had mentioned earlier, this is I'm going to be 55 years old this fall. So I started using drugs when I was 14 years old. Just got into drinking and marijuana. But I tried a very significant point in my life was when I was 15. Two things happened. I tried cocaine for the first time, and I got arrested for the first time. We were playing with a pellet gun. We were kids, and we shot somebody. We didn't know it even happened until we read about it the next day in the paper. We were shooting cars and trucks, which is not a good idea. And then we read the article because the police were combing the hill and they were looking for a sniper. And we thought, wow, that's weird. We were like with a BB gun in the woods, and it turned out that they surgically removed this pellet from this person's wrist. They were driving. Thank God they didn't crash. But it was my first encounter with law enforcement, brought a lot of shame to my mother and father. Previous to this, growing up, I experienced some sexual abuse from different neighbors in my neighborhood and didn't know what to do with that either, and the messages were not worthy, feeling scared, being threatened not to tell, feeling like damaged goods, just unclean and not understanding what to do with all those feelings. And not, I wish there was, and I preach this, I go in elementary schools, as a recovery coach, promoting our peer recovery model that we do now in our community, but to talk to the kids about making healthy choices. And I always advocate, like I wish I had a safe adult, a healthy adult that I could have told and spoke to, and always share with the kids, like if there's somebody you trust, and something's going on that doesn't feel right, please go talk to them, go talk to your teacher, or, because it's those secrets, right, that keep us sick. And so I think that had a lot to do with my drug use. Cocaine made me feel euphoric. It made me feel powerful. It numbed me. However, there's a crash, right? And you come down and then you experience depression. And so I wanted more. I needed more. So I got addicted like early, 15 years old, moved out of my house. By the time I was 17, I learned if I sold cocaine, then I could have really as much as I needed to do without paying for it. So really in the beginning, I kind of was selling it to get it for free to party on the weekends, right? And so started hanging out with older people that were drug dealers, going to nightclubs, making runs for them back and forth to colleges and nightclubs. I was a kid. I was like 17 and dropped out of school and realized I had a problem when I was actually running out of my own drugs. I became my own best customer. And then I started robbing other drug dealers. People were after me. It started getting scary, dangerous. So I went to a school counselor and told him I needed help. I actually tried to join the Army to get out of town, right? I'm going to join the Army and I'll become a special forces soldier, which was a dream of mine. And then I'll come back and no one will mess with me, right? And I'll be big and powerful. And I failed the drug test. Like the Army didn't take me. And so I went and talked to a school counselor. We had a meeting with my parents, tried to reconcile with my parents. My parents had insurance and they sent me to my first inpatient treatment center. When I was 18 years old, I was would have been a senior that year in high school, was able to get a tutor, work it out with the school. If I made up my schoolwork for my senior year, I could get my high school diploma. So that was my first experience of getting introduced to Narcotics Anonymous, 12-step programs. I came home 12 days after rehab, moved back in with my parents, started smoking pot. They found some marijuana in my room, kicked me out. So I went back to selling cocaine, and then I tried freebasing cocaine for the first time. And I liked the hit that I took, the euphoria that I got. So this is like late 80s and crack epidemic in New York. And so I got addicted to crack. I mean, bottom line, and everything just like changed. I mean, I stole my parents' car, got it shot up, stole money from their bank account, was robbing people. It was a scary time. I have an uncle still. He just celebrated his 81st birthday. But back then, he knew what was going on. And he told me he had a friend that was a Narcotics Anonymous. He said, hop on a plane, come out to Colorado. My friend will take you to a meeting. Day one, I'll send you a one-way ticket. But the deal is, here's the deal. You have to stay sober. You could stay at our house with me and my family, get a job. But if you relapse, you're out. Like zero tolerance. And I said, bet, let's go. Packed a duffel bag, got on a plane, came to Denver, got a job at a health club. I was always into fitness and stayed sober, got a sponsor, worked the steps, started working the steps, relapsed. Long story short, met a girl, went to a party, had a couple drinks because I'm not an alcoholic, right? So I can drink in my head, I thought. And of course, as soon as I had a buzz, I wanted to go find crack and found out where they sold crack in Denver. And I became homeless for the first time. Really. I mean, going from middle-class suburbia Long Island to downtown, the streets of Denver, and had burned all my bridges. Family wrote me off for dead, basically. And so that was like my crash course of, surviving on the streets, robbing, stealing, selling dope, breaking into buildings when it was cold out, like sleep in the laundry room, or storage units, and just surviving. And that started all like my petty street arrests, like getting caught with, a crack pipe, city jail for 2 days, get out, get a trespassing case, go to jail, fighting, got caught stealing from a store, all these misdemeanors. I probably got arrested over 25 times in like a 4-year period from 20 to 24 years old. I was basically just on and off the streets for those 4 years and in and out of jail. Met my first wife, had a son. That's what brought me up to the western slope of Colorado. It's like I tried to do the geographic thing, right? Like, let's get out of Denver. If I just get out of the city. So we moved up to the mountains. I got my first cocaine felony possession charge in Aspen, Colorado, 1996. And my wife was pregnant at the time with our second son. And by the time he was born, I was in and out of work release. They gave me a deferred sentence. I violated that probation 5 times. So from 96 to 98, I probably spent over 150 days in the county jail. And then the judge sent me to prison for the first time. So, long story short, from 98 to 2011, I was in and out of prison, state penitentiary here in Colorado, 7 times. My first sentence was 2 to 6 years. And then I got a menacing felony conviction. I threatened somebody on the street, got a couple years for that. And then I also got an escape charge. I didn't break out of a prison. I actually cut an ankle bracelet off. I had a GPS unit. And if I got high and I cut it off and took off and that's considered escape. I got 2 years for that. During my prison sentences, I was diagnosed with bipolar and PTSD. And I definitely had some trauma, but they put me on lithium, they put me on Seroquel, they put me on trazodone. And so the vicious cycle that I had got into now was I would go into the prison system, I'd get on all these psych meds, and I didn't get high in prison. Like I would work out, I would read, was trying to figure out my faith, read the Bible. But then when I would get out, 4 of those 7 times I would get out, I got paroled homeless. And so I know the plight of getting out of prison with a piece of paper. You got to go here, for a drug test. You got to go here to get food. You got to go over there to check in with parole. And it's like, I've got no money, no phone, no car, no job, no family support. And so usually I just threw that piece of paper out, go back to the people I knew on the streets and just pick up where I left off. There were times where I actually turned myself in. And I write about it in my book that, we'll talk about, where I was so strung out or I needed medical attention. I just wanted to lay my head down and sleep and feel safe. And I was ready. Going back to prison was like part of my life. And I just accepted at one point in my life that I'm going to overdose, I'm going to die on the streets, someone's going to kill me out here, or I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. Because I really didn't see a way out. I tried, well, I say I tried different recovery paths. Um, Looking back in retrospect, I was never all in. I wanted the benefits of recovery, but I really didn't want to do the work. I didn't want to feel the pain. And somebody shared with me that when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing, you're not going to change until that pain becomes greater of staying the same, right? And so in 2011 was the last time I was in prison, and I was 40 years old. I was broke, homeless again. I was going to get out homeless. My oldest son, my two sons at the time were in high school, and my oldest was about to graduate. He was a senior that year, and I just thought I'm going to do whatever it takes to get sober. And so got released from prison the last time, uh, homeless, but now the state put me on SSI. They said I was too mentally disabled and had no job history because I was in and out of prison for so long. And with my diagnosis, they put me on SSI. So I got a monthly check and food stamps. But this enabled me. I stayed at a hostel. I moved into the town up here in Glenwood Springs where my kids were going to high school at the time to try to reconnect with my sons, which was challenging, but I was determined to try to do it. And I went to dually diagnosed groups twice a week. I went to therapy. I went to church. I went to 12-step meetings. And I started learning about what real recovery looks like. But I would get 6 months clean, relapse, start over. Get another couple months clean, relapse. It was a process that in 2012, so I had about less than a year of reuniting with my sons. I do have a relationship with them today. I've got 6 grandchildren. What a blessing, right? But that same year, I met my current wife. My first wife divorced me the first time I went to prison, so it's been a long time. But I met a lady, and she got pregnant that same year. We've been together ever since. We have a 12-year-old son at home, and that kind of just started my new journey. I got into martial arts, and then I got into doing security work. However, the security work I got into was managing nightclub security. And so I worked my way up to got my first black belt in Krav Maga when I was 46. I've now got 3 black belts from 3 different organizations, and that really empowered me, right? The like I'm in my 40s, and I'm going to start from, the beginning, and I'm capable of learning something new. It was very empowering and built my confidence and my self-esteem. However, I used my new found passion, Krav Maga, to get my foot in the door for security field. I had a lot of real world violent experiences that I don't like to talk too much about, but it was part of my history growing up in and out of the penitentiary in my 20s and 30s and being on the streets. And now I was learning how to control violence and only use it if necessary, right? And so I started to market myself in that capacity in the security business and got into some close protection work, celebrity protection. As a felon, I'm not allowed to carry a gun, so it was all unarmed stuff, but I worked armed posts, like wearing a bulletproof vest and working some high risk jobs just because I wanted to build this resume because I've been to prison 7 times. I'm a 3-time convicted felon. Like no one was trying to give me a job in the security field. But I told him, if you need a guy that'll get down, like if you have some rough spots, I'm not bulletproof, but I've been there. And so anyways, long story short, I worked my way up. They nicknamed me the pit bull because when I needed to be, I could be aggressive. And I wrote a book in 2018 called The Pit Bull Bouncer, about my nightclub experience, but really I was still in my addiction. It was really an addiction trap. I got out of construction work. I was just training full time and working a few nights a week up in Aspen, working private clubs, private security and stuff like that. But I was doing cocaine every weekend. I got back into cocaine. I wasn't smoking it, and I still was maintaining. My wife had left me during this time 3 different times because she's not a drug addict and wasn't tolerating it. So it was I usually got back in recovery from 2011 to 2018, really just to save my marriage and hoping I would get it, but I really wasn't willing to give up my lifestyle. In 2018, I overdosed on cocaine. I got rhabdomyolysis. I don't know if you know what that's. Some extreme athletes get that from extreme dehydration. And I do want to add, I'm drug free. During that time, I was on and off anabolic steroids and doing cocaine. So in 2018, I was on 3 different steroids, and my kidney I got rhabdomyolysis. My kidney function shut down. I was rushed to the hospital. I was hospitalized for 6 days. And I didn't know if I was going to walk out of there. And that's really, I mean, there's a lot more behind that story with me wrestling with God, so to speak, spiritually. I really felt the calling to be of service, and I wanted to be of service, but I had worked for decades to create this image of this pit bull bouncer, right? This tough guy, a guy that I felt I needed to be to survive in this world. And really inside, I was that scared, insecure little boy that was sexually abused. And that felt like I needed to be powerful and able to fight and not let anything like that ever happen to me or my family again. That was kind of like my mindset. And so in that process, I was just killing myself, with drugs. And so in 2018, in the hospital, I prayed a prayer, and it wasn't like the skies opened and I saw doves but I just prayed to God that if you allowed me to walk out of here, all the things that I've neglected to do, because I knew the things that I wasn't willing to do, like in AA, or the demons inside that I wasn't willing to look at. I knew the stuff I was comfortable talking about in therapy, and then there was stuff like I wasn't going to talk about. And that's the stuff that was keeping me sick, right? In that deep, dark place, if you're willing to go there, and I found with the proper support, I can go there safely and unpack that stuff. And that's actually where the greatest light is, right? If we're willing to go there to that dark place and just expose it. But it's scary. And so I did a lot of, I had a lot of therapy. I got off all my medication. Actually I got off all my meds in 2012. I wanted to learn how to manage life without it. But I still was relapsing, I told you, until 2018. But to be transparent, so in 2018, I got out. I started a Bible study. I started what we call Kings and Priests Ministry. That's my nonprofit organization, but it wasn't officially registered at the time. Started doing Bible study in one county jail. And of course, I quit working at the nightclub. I quit my full-time job. I started volunteering at the parole office, just being of service. Said, hey, if you get a guy that comes out of prison, he needs a ride. If I'm available, I'll take him to wherever he needs to go. Who better to help guys like us than guys like us, guys that have been there, right? I knew the plight. And then in 2019, I took my first recovery coach certification course in ethics and professionalism. I did about 70 hours of training. But I went to a martial arts event in Atlantic City, had a glass of wine against my better judgment, but I felt like I don't even like wine and I'm not alcoholic, all the justification. And I relapsed. Then in 2019, I really like the concept that I learned in C-Corps that you're in recovery when you say you're in recovery. Like, this is your recovery. This is between you and your higher power, right? And so I wasn't going to stop being of service to people. I fell off the wagon. Like, what's the growth opportunity here? What led up to that relapse? How did I let my guard down? What lessons can we learn? And I just continued being of service, even though I only had like a day clean, right? And I am a faith-based guy, like there's people in the Bible. God used very fallible people, right? And, the fact that the Apostle Peter denied Christ 3 times, and then in the book of Acts, he used Peter at Pentecost to bring 3,000 people to Christ, right? And so I felt like every time I relapsed, I was denying Christ, right? I was denying my God and all that he created me to be. But that doesn't mean I'm unworthy or change is impossible. That's kind of where my head used to be at, where I would just give up. I'm like, well, apparently I can't do this, so why try? And I would just go downhill. And so I got back on my horse, so to speak, and became a recovery coach. I became an approved treatment provider, actually, for the parole department. They needed someone to do their substance abuse classes, and I partnered with a drug counselor. I set up the business. But when COVID hit in 2020, I was going to work for a treatment provider in our community. I was going to be the first mobile recovery coach for the same entity where I was getting my counseling on and off for all these years, and so I was super excited. I got a call from a nightclub in Aspen to come work a 3-day event, and my wife begged me not to go. She said, "Don't do this. Don't put yourself in that arena." And I'm like, "I got another year clean. I'm good. I'm going to be working for this treatment provider. I'm good. I got this." And I made it the first 2 days, and the third day I relapsed. And so my last relapse, and I'm just being transparent, my sobriety date is February of 2020. But it was devastating. And I called the treatment provider and I said, "I relapsed." And they said, "Take 3 months, get a sponsor, work the steps, come back, revisit us in 3 months." And at that time, COVID had just hit. It was 2020. And I had guys calling me getting out of the county jail. And there was nowhere to go. Like AA was the only AA meeting in our town. There was only one was shut down. The food bank was shut down. There were no jobs. There's no homeless shelter where we live. And I just thought, I'm gonna I'll do whatever I need to do. Like, I know the plight, and I'll rent the building. I don't care if they want us to wear masks or whatever, but I'll serve sandwiches. We'll have like a general all recovery meeting if AA wants to come. And I found a landlord to take my money, told him what I wanted to do, like open a recovery community center, as I call it. And I was talking to a reporter about what I wanted to do. And I had no experience, no building, no money, but there was a need in our community. And I quit working for the treatment provider. And I thought, I'm just going to do this on my own. I don't know how, but I will. And so, we rented a building. I talked to a reporter, and then the word got out in the community what we were going to put in that space. And the business neighbors, all they heard was felons, drug addicts, homeless people. Like, who is this guy? He's a felon. Like what's going to happen to our neighborhood? And that's the first taste I got about not in my backyard. It's the first lessons I learned about zoning. It wasn't zoned for community service. There's only certain sections in the town that are, and this is stuff, right, that I write about in the book. That, like, this is a book I wish somebody would have wrote for me 5 years ago. But the newspaper article came out, and then the dean at the local college saw the article, and she said, "Hey, most of our campus is shut down. Would you be interested in renting a classroom from us?" Because the campus is basically empty. We do have a mask mandate, and I'm like, "Whatever you guys want me to do." And so we bought prepackaged foods, and I got somebody to help me with my first grant application and my first grant in 2020. But I had to form an official nonprofit, like register with the IRS. Well, how do you do that, right? I didn't know where to start. I found a lawyer that was in AA with me, right? And he helped me with the paperwork. And then it was like, "Okay, who's on your board of directors?" Well, what's a board of directors? Why do I need a board of directors? Because nobody's going to give you, Gabe Cohen, 3-time felon, a check for $100,000, right? You need to have a board that's going to oversee that you're going to do the right thing, vetted people in the community. So I talked to one of the parole officers. "Hey, I'm a felon. Wouldn't it be awesome? Would you like to be on my board and help me with this?" Because I developed different relationships now with different people in the community by volunteering. So I had somebody from the parole office on my board. I got a deputy from the sheriff's department on my board, somebody that worked at the hospital. And so, again, I talk about that in the book, right? It's very important that you choose your board wisely, right? People that I respect and trust, and people that I feel respect and trust me. Get them on board for your mission. What I really learned is I don't need to know how to do everything. What I need to do is find the people that can do the things I don't know how to do. Get them on board with my mission and ask them if they'll help me. And, the other piece of that is ask them for help. Be willing to ask for help and say, "I don't know." And so for me, there was great lessons in humility, letting go of my ego and my pride, and just saying, sharing my lived experience. There's power in your story. And just saying, I want to be of service. I have a heart to serve. I have this dream of serving, but I need help. Are you willing to help me? And so from opened our recovery community center, we call it the Discovery Cafe. So a sanctuary of new beginnings, and you can discover new things about yourself. You can discover resources. I see ourselves as a resource broker in our community, so to speak. We have what we call discovery groups, Mondays and Fridays. We have Discovery Lab, which are recovery-based classes. Everything we offer is free. We offer lunch. We offer coffee, snacks. We're open from 10 to 4. I always have a couple peers in the space that work for me now. And we introduced it to the same county jail where I started the Bible study. And by the way, Discovery Cafe is a secular peer recovery program. Even though it falls underneath my ministry, religion used to be a barrier for me. And I don't want it to be a barrier for anybody. We're called to love everybody and meet people where they're at, right? Come alongside them. And so, yeah, we introduced it to the county jail. We run groups in there. We run Discovery Lab in there. The public library gifted us a space. So we've been at the public library for about going on 2 years. We run the Colorado Association of Libraries Partnership of the Year Award last year for our partnership with the library. And we introduced it into the prison system. So I was in 5 different prisons the last couple of years. I actually secured funding to hire inmates, train them as recovery coaches, get them certified, train them in our model, and then let them run their own peer-run groups under Discovery Cafe with my supervision. We've had hundreds of inmates every month coming through our program. Having said all that, we have generated, since fall of 2020, current date, over $2.2 million in grants and contracts. I became a private contractor with DOC for the work we were doing in there, and also purchased, I have 2 homes, and turned them into sober living homes for justice-involved men, too. So that's what we got going on in our community. And I tell the story about how we did it because I got a lot of people come up to me. I've had different counties call me. How did you do this? Discovery Cafe is in Rifle, Colorado. It's about 20 miles west of where I live. But how did you do this in a rural community? How can we do this in our urban community? Like where do you start? How do you do this? So this is basically a book that step by step tells you how I did it and how you can do it too. And there's examples, there's places in the back where you can, journal, and so it's been helpful too. I purchased hundreds of copies for the prison system that we donated for free to encourage people.
Wow, that's amazing. Your story is wild. It's crazy to see you now and doing all of these amazing things. And this is where I vibrate differently when you talk about all the stuff you're doing now. I mean, it's so transformative getting it boots on the ground in the jails and working with these people. I have some questions about your story.
Absolutely.
You had mentioned, your time in prison over 7 years. And now you had been involved in some crime. However, I think, knowing you now, the root of your crime was your addiction. If you weren't on any drugs, you wouldn't have been performing these acts of crime. So my question for you there is, was there ever any talk about going to rehab, going to a 12-step when you were getting arrested for these things?
Yeah, that is a good question. Because my story spans over a couple decades, I tried to give you the bullet points. But yeah, there were times where there was alternative sentencing where it was like, okay, look, you can go to treatment for 30 days and then we'll send you to a halfway house and you can avoid going to prison. And I did that. But I've also got high in the halfway house and then took off and then they sent me back to prison.
Gotcha.
And then at one time in the prison system, there was something called therapeutic community. And they actually still have it here in Colorado where it's 24 hours of drug treatment in the prison system. You do groups, you have individual counseling, you have your own separate housing unit. The problem, in my opinion, and I'm a person that went through it, I made it 5 months. I got kicked out for fighting, no violence, no threats of violence, but I did get in a fight and I got kicked out. I see the problem there is it's, you got to be willing to call your neighbor out on different things. They call it pulling them up. I'm trying to raise your awareness and your accountability. That's not always easy to do in a prison setting. If you get kicked out of the program, you might wind up on a yard with the guy that you told on in the program, that got kicked out too. And so criminals can be savvy and they learn kind of how to play the system in a way. I think it's good for people that never experienced any kind of treatment because it's something, but it's still, they might have their own building, but they're still on a prison yard where there's general population. And so people are still getting high out here and then coming back into the program. But yeah, there's some classes. In my opinion, there's not enough classes. I think peer support is really great. I think education's really great. I think there should be alternative services to just locking people up for drug crimes. I really think sober living homes with peer support coupled with professional counseling is where it's at.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree with you.
That's my
I think
experience.
a lot of the sober livings, at least from what I know about in my area, they really don't do a lot of that peer support. It's more just stay here, stay out of trouble, maybe a meeting once a week, a house meeting. But it's such an opportunity for someone like you or peer recovery people to come in because these are such a vulnerable population of people where that change can really happen. As you see in your story is interesting. Relapse is part of your story. And when I hear you tell your story, it's like I can see it, looking back in retrospect. One is that you really needed to deal with your internal wound, your big T trauma. Someone needed to work with you on that. And then the other part, once you got that, taken care of, was I think when you started your acts of service, that really flipped the switch for you.
Absolutely. 2018, I had been trying to volunteer in the jail because in my head, I thought if I could just be of service to other people, then I'll get sober. But since I have to work and I don't really like my life, I'm going to use, and as long as I don't overdo it, but that was my justification. But I felt like if I could just be of service, what I learned is we have to learn how to manage and deal with our own stuff and get sober and know what recovery actually looks like before we can actually serve others. Um, but it takes time and it takes what it takes. I really want to encourage people. I really don't like this is just my personal opinion, the quote of, relapse is part of recovery, because to me, it sounds like it's kind of condoning it, but it's really not. It may happen, it may not happen. My message is if it happens, you're going to feel like crap for like at least a week, right? You messed up your brain chemistry. You might be depressed, but get support. It's not over. You don't have to throw in the towel, right? And what lessons can we learn? Like I always talk about like reverse engineering that last relapse. Like what happened? What led up? What did you stop doing or what did you start doing that led up to you using? What can we learn about this to make sure that it never happens again, right? And so just to inspire hope that, and I'm a guy that got out of prison, broken homeless at 40. I still struggled with recovery from 40 to 48, overdosed at 48, relapsed at 49, relapsed at 50, and now thank God I've been sober, without any relapses. I don't even open the door. I know I can't drink. I don't want to drink. I don't want to smoke pot. I just don't need to do anything. And if I start snapping at home more than usual, it's because something's going on with me internally. I've got, I'll call my therapist. I'll invest in myself because I want to be my best self for my family first and foremost, and then for the community. But it all starts with taking care of me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about how your book came to be. It sounds really cool. It sounds kind of like an instruction manual for people who are passionate about giving back in the recovery space. So the book is called The Peer Recovery Community Organization. How long did it take you to write it and how did it come to be?
Yeah. And the subtitle, it's kind of long, but I wanted it all in there. It's how to leverage your lived experience and create a new legacy. And so for the last couple of years, I had gone to a recovery community organization like workshop just to see like what they were teaching. I had to learn all these lessons on my own. What is a recovery community organization, right? And what is peer work? And I just kind of jumped in with both feet and I shared the scenario that I was building the airplane while I was flying the airplane, right? But at this workshop, it was really more like an infomercial of who they are, what they did, but nobody was teaching. But in my experience, what I found, my new lived experience, right? I have my lived recovery experience, but now I have this new lived experience of how I started a nonprofit, a peer recovery community organization in our community. Nobody was teaching how to do this. And I wondered why. I'm in Colorado. It's a big state. I'm 200 miles west of Denver, but I know who like all the big players are. They know who I am, right? I was the leading peer program in Colorado Department of Corrections, right? And there's a handful of us, of the main nonprofits. And why is everybody coveting the information of how to start this? All the trainings that I see is the peer recovery coach training. It's how to be a recovery coach. What is a recovery coach? Yes, all that's important, but they're really not setting you up to start your own business. They're teaching you this so you can go get a job and work for somebody else. And my thinking is everyone's scared that there's not enough pie to go around. There's only so many grants. We're all scrambling. If I don't find grant money next year, I'm out of a job, right? And so, but that's a shame. There's people dying every day. Even in this rural community, there's people that are overdosing, the epidemic, drug addiction, alcoholism, abuse. There should be a recovery community center in every community, like a post office. You know, we had a second location that was in a medical clinic. We went into the employee lounge. They gifted us and we had recovery groups in there. And if after someone saw the therapist, if they were still feeling some anxiety, they can come in there and sit down. There's different creative ways to do this. And I talk about all that in the book. So it really, about a year ago, I had been doing a lot of writing over the last couple years. I love to write too, and a lot of it had to do with my prison experience. I wrote and I read a lot. My problem is I didn't know how to structure it so it would flow nicely. And so, to be transparent, I was in a position in my life now where I could hire a writing coach, and I just laid out my idea. I had the themes that I wanted to talk about, like what's a board of directors, how to start one, where do we find the money, right? Finding volunteers and staff and leaders, grants and fundraising. I give different examples about different meetings that we run and how you can run them too. And so I just laid out what I wanted to talk about. I had the content. I just needed help making it flow. Like the editing part, how does it pertain to like the different chapters in the book? So it was about a year process and working with somebody and doing this while I'm spending 2 or 3 days in a prison, away from home, on the road, away from my family. I've been busy the last couple years, but my goal this year was to get this book done because I want to encourage other people to start their own recovery community center. This is how I did it. There's ideas in here how you can do it, and also offer myself as a consultant. So if anyone has any questions and they want to reach out and talk to me, give me a call. All my information's in here.
That's awesome. How can people reach out to you?
Sure. So my website is actually gabecohen.me. You can see the Discovery Cafe website. It's discoverycafe.org. But you can get a hold of me and look at what's in the contact of the book too. It's available on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon, you pull up the Peer Recovery Community Organization, get yourself a copy. And I'm available for keynote speaking and program development. We developed a program for the largest prison in Colorado for a legislative bill too. I subcontracted with some consultants and they wanted a peer program for Sterling Correctional Center, which is the largest prison in Colorado. And we did that a couple years ago. I got contracted by the state to do that. So yeah, I just want to encourage people to dream big, and it's also never too late to get in recovery. Right? Don't give up. You're worth it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, we have made it to the lightning round of our show. So I asked the same 5 questions to each guest. It's a fun get to know you kind of segment in the end part of our interview. So the first question is, you're given 3 options. You have to pick one. Would you shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive?
Probably shark dive.
Okay.
Heights
awesome.
make me nervous. Yeah.
I hear that a lot. Number 2, you're in a simulation. Yeah. Every time you walk into a room, the same song plays. What's your song?
I like Machine Head by Bush. When I'm about to do a heavy set at the gym, I usually put that song on.
It's a good one. It's an oldie, but a good one. Number 3, what's your favorite Disney? What's your favorite Disney movie?
Wow. Was Beauty and the Beast the Disney movie?
Huh? Yeah.
I guess Beauty and the Beast.
That's a good one. She was smart. Number 4, what is something you're obsessed with?
Being of service. Just being of service. That's how I want to spend the rest of my days. For sure.
Love that. Last question, number 5. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom, to me, means having choices, the ability to choose, the ability to make mistakes and learn from them. I usually follow up when I talk about recovery, that recovery is freedom. And I think also discipline, even though it sounds kind of like counter freedom. For me, instilling discipline into my life has enabled me to have freedom, but basically the opportunity, the freedom to choose, have choices, healthy choices. today.
Yeah, I love that. Big fan of discipline myself. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. Your story is going to help so many people. And I just appreciate it from the bottom of my heart for you sharing your story with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great. Thank you, Megan.
All right, bye.